Barakatah Yahweh, Ba'Hashem Yahushai, Ba'Hashem Rachah Kodash. Welcome to another live lesson. The name of this one is Numbers chapter 5. And pretty much this lesson comes from an inspiration of a question that was left on the comment board sometime last week, I believe. And it was actually on this video here. You got the blind and you got this sellout. And pretty much this brother here, Mashabar Banyamyan, he says, Shalom, elder, water for the edifying lesson. Do you have a lesson on Numbers chapter 5? And I pretty much told him, La'ah, which means no. Lord's will, I look into it. Now, I don't believe there was a breakdown done on the whole book of Numbers, the 5th chapter. I'm pretty sure Elder Pastor, more than likely touched on certain parts of it. But that I could think of, I don't think anybody ever went through the book of Numbers, the 5th chapter. So Lord's will, we're going to go through it, get some points, and if you want to do more in-depth research, you can take the scriptures, that are, part of or a precept from these different scriptures, but you could do that yourself. You could pick up the Bible, if your Bible has precepts in it, and go to Numbers, the 5th chapter, and it will send you to other chapters in the Bible, that explain what that particular, verse is speaking about. So let's get to it. I didn't write anything down. I was just kind of I read through it the other day, then I read through it this morning again, and I followed some of the precepts. So Lord's will, the precepts will come back. And we'll take it from there. So Numbers chapter 5, for verse 1, this is dealing on defilement. All right. The word defilement or defile means to be unclean. All right. So there's certain ordinances that you would do where you would, so that you wouldn't be unclean. And there were certain things that you did or didn't do that would consider you to be unclean. It says, and the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, command the children of Israel that they put out of the camp every leper. So we're dealing with this first. They said, the Lord said to put out of the camp every leper, right? Because you have different forms of leprosy. You have clean leprosy, you have unclean leprosy, you have leprosy which has raw skin. You have other leprosy which turns your hair blonde. You have other leprosy which turns your skin from dark brown to a pale color like Esau, such as the case with Miriam, because it says, command the children of Israel that they put out the camp every leper. And when we go to the history on Miriam, the murmuring of Miriam and Aaron. And by the way, if I'm not mistaken, I believe Miriam was the oldest, then Aaron, then Moses, if I'm not mistaken. And Miriam died, she died first. And, usually when certain men would die, especially great men, and she would be considered like a great woman, they made like a big, a big thing about it, because, a great man in Israel died. When she died, they really just said, well, Miriam just died. They didn't make any, big to-do about it, I'm not saying anybody didn't mourn, but the scriptures didn't get specific. Now, when Jacob died and, and other great men died, people made a great lamentation for them. Just, just a tidbit that I ran across. So we read Numbers 12, and we know that Miriam and Aaron, they were cursing Moses out because he had an Ethiopian woman, right, that he had married. So they had a problem with that. For these guys that say, well, you can't, be having no heathen women. Well, here is a man of the Lord, Moses, a Levite, who had a heathen woman, and his sister and his brother were cursing him out about it. And guess what? The Lord struck Miriam with leprosy. He turned her skin white as snow, right? And what happened was, when Aaron and others saw her, they were like, Lord, don't lay this sin upon us, because it was a curse to look like that. It's a curse to look like a so-called white person. That's leprosy. In the case of Esau, it would be known as a clean leper because he's completely, completely stripped of his pigment, right? And when we read further down, when it gets straight to the point here, you can read the whole chapter, Numbers 12 and 14. And the Lord said unto Moses, if her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out from the camp 7 days, and after that let her be received in again. So she was out in the wilderness for 7 days on her own. And they waited at the camp 7 days until Miriam went through her purification, so to speak, for being defiled and put out of the camp. So when you had a leper, the leper would have to be put out of the camp. And when we go to Leviticus chapter 13 and verse 1, it says, and the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron, saying, when a man shall have in the skin of his flesh a rising, a scab, or a bright spot, and it be in the skin of his flesh like the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest, or unto one of his sons the priest. And the priest shall look on the plague in the skin of the flesh, and when the hair in the plague is turned white, and the plague in sight be deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is a plague of leprosy, and the priest shall look on him and pronounce him unclean. Because with Jake, sometimes you would fall, or you would scrape your knee, or scrape your arm, your elbow, and the term is down to the white meat. So in a case like that, you would look at it, and that person would be set aside from the camp for a certain period of time. Now, after the certain period of time, depending on whether it was 3 days or 7 days, when the priest looked at it again, if it's not spreading, then it's not a leprosy. He just happened to fall or scrape himself or something along those lines. And that happens. You see Jake, they might fall, especially children, and they scrape themselves, and they'll have like a mark on their arm or their leg, from when they fell. But after a while, it heals and it comes back to its natural color. That's not leprosy. That just happens to be a sore. So whenever you had these things come up on your flesh, the priest would have to look at you to pronounce you either if you had leprosy or not. And like I said, there's many different ones. If you want to get a better understanding, read Leviticus 13 and 14, and you'll get more in depth on the plague of leprosy. So we jump down to the 46th verse. It says, all the days wherein, let me start at 45. And the leper in whom the plague is, his clothes shall be rent, and his beard bare, and he shall put a covering upon his upper lip, and shall cry, unclean, unclean. All the days wherein the plague shall be in him, he shall be defiled, he is unclean, he shall dwell alone, without the camp shall his habitation be. Right, so he will have to be without the camp. Now we are under grace, because you have brothers that do have leprosy. Some brothers that have spotted leprosy, some brothers have actual, look like Edomites. Their whole body is stripped of pigmentation, but we're under grace now. But in the past, they would have to be put without the camp. And as we read more through the three different types of defilement, which one was leprosy, and then the next one is, and everyone that hath an issue. What is that issue? That issue is discharge. Something that, like we had something called gonorrhea. And when you get gonorrhea, you have a discharge that comes out with this yellow or green pus coming out of your rod. So when you had something like that, you were defiled. You couldn't come around. Anything you sat on, anything you were amongst, anything that touched you, anything that you touched would be unclean unto the evening. Now we look up this word issue, right? Issue. The word is zawab. The word is to flush, gush, issue, discharge, a discharge, like from having a disease, a venereal disease. Right, now let's go from there real quick to Leviticus 15. And again, you want to know more about it, You could read, it says cleansing unhealthiness. And you could read through this whole chapter, and it'll give you more specifics on every, type of defilement. Leviticus 15:1. And the Lord spake unto Moses and to Aaron, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, When any man hath a running issue out of his flesh, because of his issue he is unclean. And this shall be the uncleanness in his tissue, whether his flesh run with issue, or his flesh be stopped from his issue. It is his uncleanness. And you will have to actually go through a purification process of what to do. Every bed wherein he lieth that hath the issue is unclean, and everything wherein he sitteth shall be unclean, so on and so forth. So you can read the rest of this. So far we dealt with the leprosy part and the issue, an issue running from individual's flesh. All right, those are two types of defilements as we read here. The next one is, and whosoever is defiled by the dead. Now that's another, form of defilement or uncleanness. And this is pretty much just a law, just reiterating that. Because when you go to Leviticus, which is a book prior to this, it goes into the whole thing. It goes into the different types of defilements. And the Numbers is just reiterating pretty much what was said in the book of Numbers. So we go to Numbers 19:11. It says, He that toucheth the dead body of any man shall be unclean 7 days. So, and you can read the rest. It tells you, if he touches this, if he touches that, it's unclean until the evening. This person got to wash, and so on and so forth. You could go through it and actually read more up on it, and get more understanding on what it is to be defiled by touching a dead body. So these three were three examples of people that were unclean, that were supposed to be put from the camp, or were supposed to go through a purification process so that they wouldn't infect everybody else, because the Most High is holy. So if these individuals were not dealt with as far as being cleansed, they would make the whole camp unclean. And the Most High can't dwell amongst that. It says, both male and female shall be put out without the camp. See, shall ye put them, that they defile not their camps in the midst whereof I dwell. See, it says, and the children of Israel did so, and put them out without the camp, as the Lord spake unto Moses. So did the children of Israel. All right, now the next part of this is from the 5th verse down. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, when a man or woman shall commit any sin that men commit, to do a trespass against the Lord, and that person be guilty. So there's other laws also, I believe is in Leviticus, it might be in Exodus also, in Deuteronomy, where if you commit a crime against your brother, there were certain penalties that had to follow. Like if you stole something from them, you would have to repay them fourfold. If they lent something to you, you would have to guard that as if it was yours. And if you happen to lose it, whether you did it purposely or not, you had to restore back to them. To what? To make it good between you and that person and the Heavenly Father. Then they shall confess their sin which they have done, and he shall recompense his trespass with the principal. So now recompense means to pay back. The trespass is the act that he committed against his brother, and the principal is the thing that was used, or that was where the sin was committed. Whether you stole some silver or some gold from them, or you stole a cattle, or they lent you or told you to keep an eye on their ox, and you didn't, and somehow the ox ended up dead. So you would have to, that would be the principle, right? And then, and add unto it the 5th part thereof, right? So you're giving the principle back, plus you're adding the 5th part to it, to recompense them, because it was in your possession, or you stole it. You committed the trespass. So you had to restore that, plus you had to also add a 5th to it. And give it unto him against whom he hath trespassed. But if the man have no kinsman to recompense the trespass unto, let the trespass be recompensed unto the Lord. Right. And that's where the priest would come in. So if there was nobody to give that trespass offering to, or make it right with, guess what? The priests that were in those days would receive it. Because remember, the priests didn't have an inheritance among Israel. should I say, they didn't have an inheritance as far as land was concerned. They would be among all the different tribes, and they would get the best of the lands of all the different tribes in the suburbs. So that was their portion, and they would live off of the priesthood. Because there were benefits that came with that. Because there's a lot of work and a lot of hard work that the priests had to do. I remember years ago reading about the priests. I was getting exhausted just reading about it. It's like, damn, man, the Levites had a lot to do. It says, even to the priest beside the ram of the atonement, whereby an atonement shall be made for him, and every offering of all the holy things of the children of Israel, which they bring unto the priest, shall be his. Every man's hallowed thing shall be his. Whatsoever any man giveth the priest, it shall be his. Now we get into the point of the last part of this chapter, because it's broken up into 3 parts. Defilement, trespass offerings, and adultery. Now, in the case of this adultery here, because the scriptures say that you should not commit adultery, and if the man and woman commit adultery, the penalty for that was what? Death. So this was another type of adultery, which is adultery as far as a woman laying down with another man. But sometimes this particular law is something known as the law of jealousy. Because sometimes a man being connected with his woman, there's times when that something is wrong. Like because some other man done came between that union, and you feel it in the spirit, like something is wrong. Like this, this chick done did something, and that's what this law was all about. So let's get into it. The adultery test. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, if any man's wife go aside and commit a trespass against him, and a man lie with her carnally, meaning he has sex with her, and it be hid from the eyes of her husband, and be kept close, and she be defiled, and there be no witness against her, neither she be taken with the manner. Because in the case of adultery itself, when you were taken in the act of adultery, pretty much, you would be stoned. Let's go to St. John, the 8th chapter. And this is dealing with the woman, right, that was caught in the act of adultery, right? It says, John 8:3, and the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery. And when they had set her in the midst, they said unto him, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. So there were witnesses that saw her committing the act of adultery. In this case, in the book of Numbers 5, the adultery test, there was no witness. But there was a feeling that the man had. The spirit of jealousy came upon him. He's jealous over his woman because there's something going on there. Now the case could be that it's nothing, or the case could be that she committed adultery, but since nobody caught her in the act, they couldn't stone her. Right? But this was what would be done. Just as if there was a crime committed and there were no witnesses, that's when the priest would step up with the Urim and the Thummim, and they would pray to the Lord, and the images of what actually happened would come upon these stones. And the Lord would actually reveal to them, what exactly took place, because there were no witnesses. So that's something similar to this, because there were no witnesses, and she wasn't taken in the manner, but her husband felt that something was wrong. It says, and the spirit of jealousy come upon him, and he be jealous of his wife, and she be defiled. Or if the spirit of jealousy come upon him, and he be jealous of his wife, and she be not defiled, then shall the man bring his wife unto the priest, and he shall bring her offering for her, the 10th part of an ephah of barley meal. So this barley meal was a trespass offering that the man brought for his woman. He shall pour no oil upon it, nor put frankincense thereon, for it is an offering of jealousy, an offering of memorial, bringing iniquity to remembrance, right? Because these are the instructions on what to do to be able to bring this back up, to see if the woman actually did this, because there were no witnesses. She wasn't taken in the act. It's a feeling that the man got. So this was the whole procedure that had to be done in order to get down to the bottom of it. Yep, that's a good precept, brother. Let me just pull that up. The brother just pull this precept up. Where is he? Right here. Proverbs 6:32, but whoso committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding. He that doeth it destroyeth his own soul. Right, because he'll be destroyed. He'll be put to death. And any children from that union are cursed. It says, and the priest shall bring her near and set her before the Lord, and the priest shall take holy water in the earthen vessel, and of the dust that is in the floor of the tabernacle, the priest shall take and put it into the water. So this was the concoction that was put together, right? It says, and the priest shall set the woman before the Lord and uncover the woman's head and put the offering of memorial in her hands, which is what? The meal, the barley meal, which is the jealousy offering. And the priest shall have in his hand the bitter water that causeth the curse. Because if she was guilty, a certain thing would happen. But if she was not guilty, she would be free from that curse. And this is how you would get down to the bottom of it. And the priest shall charge her by an oath, and say unto the woman, if no man have lain with thee, and if thou hast not gone aside to uncleanness with another instead of thy husband, be thou free from this bitter water that causeth the curse. But if thou hast gone aside to another instead of thy husband, and if thou be defiled, and some man have lain with thee beside thine husband, then the priest shall charge the woman with an oath of cursing, and the priest shall say unto the woman, the Lord make thee a curse and an oath among thy people. So this is what would happen. If she was guilty, because she was not taken in the very act, when she went through this whole procedure, if she was guilty, the outcome would be evident, and that would be her curse to when she's around the people. Oh, that bitch committed adultery, but they didn't catch her. You know, she drank that water, and you see what happened to her, right? And she would be like a curse. That would be her punishment. It says, when the Lord doth make thy thigh to rot and thy belly to swell. Like you see these women with all that, these women that lay down with all kind of men, they shit is all fucked up. Now you have, surgery, plastic surgery. You have, workout equipment, where they can do whatever, and get into better shape. But these women that have all that excess cottage cheese and their thighs are hanging down and all that, that's all part of that curse. And thy belly to swell, because, that was a curse. Because the Israelite woman, Jake back then, we didn't work out like the nations did. We didn't have no equipment, doing curls and, and presses and all that. The Lord had naturally gave us a built body. So that's why the Lord said, part of the curse for the woman in the book of Isaiah 3 is what? Instead of a stomacher, a rent, or instead of a girdle, a rent. Instead of that hourglass figure, you're going to be, out of shape. These are all part of the curses. So when you look up this word to rot, right? Thigh to rot, which we're going to get. Matter of fact, let's get something real quick. All right. See that right there? This also could happen from eating too much, but for the most part, this is a direct curse of these whorish ass women laying down with all types of men. Because the thighs, the thighs of a woman, that's an asset. That's one of the things that turn men on. Beautiful thighs. But what happened? Them beautiful thighs fell. Let's go back to Numbers 5 and look up this word rot. Because my eye, the when you read in the Red Bible, there was an actual precept number on it, and it caught my eye, and I said, what? I said, so that's why I wanted to look it up, because the word rot goes back to the word Nepal, which means to fall. Because a woman's thighs were supposed to be, when a woman is young, her thighs are nice and firm, but then when she's laying from this man to that man, that man, her thighs fall from that from that estate. It says to fall, lie, be cast down, fail. Right, and this right here is just that. Look at that. Look at this nasty shit. It ain't supposed to be like that. Look. Like I said, some of it has to do with diet, but a lot of this has to do with these women, being these big ass hoes, and that's what happens. It goes from, the nice toned thighs to this shit right here, to all this nastiness. Because the thigh would fall, as we read here in for the word rot is the word Nepal, which means fall or fallen one. Now, well, they say it's supposed to be sexy because that's the bullshit that they pushing out there, Just like there's certain things that are unclean that they say that it's sexy now. All right, so it says, and this water that causes the curse shall go into thy bowels to make thy belly to swell and thy thigh to rot, and the woman shall say, Amen, amen. So now this was the oath that the woman had to take before the priest. She's holding the trespass offering. The priest is holding the water and the bitter water. And then after she takes the vow and she confirms the vow, it says, and the priest shall write these curses in a book and shall blot them out with the bitter water, and he shall cause a woman to drink the bitter water and causeth the curse. And the water that causeth the curse shall enter into her and become bitter. Then the priest shall take the jealousy offering out of the woman's hand and shall weigh the offering before the Lord and offer it upon the altar. And the priest shall take a handful of the offering, even the memorial thereof, and burn it upon the altar. And afterwards shall cause a woman to drink the water. And when he hath made her to drink the water, then it shall come to pass that, if she be defiled, and have done trespass against her husband, that the water that causeth the curse shall enter into her and become bitter, and her belly shall swell, and her thighs shall rot, meaning they shall fall, and the woman shall be a curse among her people. And that was the curse. She wouldn't be put to death because she was not caught in the act, even though she committed adultery. But this was a curse, because it was a curse for her to be basically, that way among the people. And how Jacobs, they look at, man, that's a scandalous hoe right there. And this is why, Joseph didn't want to marry a public, how does it go? He didn't want to make her a public example. That's why he wanted to put her away, because he popped her before the actual ceremony. And he knew that once she got pregnant, that once she started showing, they were going to call her a hoe. They were probably going to want to stone her, so on and so forth. You see? So our laws, man, it's a lot, man. It's a lot to it. And if the woman be not defiled, but be clean, then she shall be free and shall conceive seed, right? But if not, then she would be a curse among the people. This is the law of jealousies, when a wife goeth aside to another instead of her husband and is defiled. Or when the spirit of jealousy cometh upon him, and he be jealous over his wife, and he shall set the woman before the Lord, and the priest shall execute upon her all this law. Then shall the man be guiltless from iniquity, and this woman shall bear her iniquity. Right. And that's pretty much it. It's pretty much self-explanatory. You just got a couple of points that you have to kind of, know, to understand. But for the most part, it's pretty much self-explanatory. All right. So that's been it, Numbers, the 5th chapter. If the Spirit hit me again to do another lesson afterwards, Lord's will, I'll go into it. So with that, I pray that you brothers and your few sisters have been edified, and I hope that this answered the brother's question. Till the next time I say, Shalom.